Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Eddie, here with another episode of Eddie G's Comic Culture, brought to you guys by Black Apparel. I want to give a special shout out to those guys out there for helping me out with the show. Thank you for the contribution once again. Um, and also sending another shout out to a friend of mine on Instagram, Strictly Comedy Vault. He's an up and coming writer. He's got some pretty good stuff on his page. If you have an Instagram account, give it a check it out. Okay. And on this episode today, I want to discuss, um, and particularly so Nintendo. Now, um, I'm. I want you guys to understand that I am a very big Nintendo fan. I've been following them from the very beginning since I was a kid. Um, and some would say and argue at this point, even folks from my generation, that they no longer really play Nintendo systems, considering the fact that they seem for them for some strange reason they feel that the systems itself as of recent, I believe since the GameCube has been gravitating more towards children's appeal of sorts and so on or whatever. But for some reason, like a lot of people in my generation and my age bracket have turned their backs on them. I haven't. I still love the material. I love the games that they put out every year. I'm still a huge Mario fan. I still play it till this day. Um, and I did purchase a Nintendo Switch earlier this year, so I'm still happy with it to this day. I'm not lamenting at all making that pickup. But however, I wanted to discuss the recent re-releases of their classic edition systems, and particularly so starting last year with the NES. Now, what Nintendo did with that was they developed they mass produced a limited amount of systems available for those, and within minutes they were sold out everywhere. People were buying their systems up and selling them online for ridiculous prices. And it seems to be that since the new Super Nintendo Classic re-release is coming up as well, it seems to be doing the same exact thing again. Now, with that being said, I do appreciate the nostalgia aspect of it. I do realize exactly how much of an impact those systems have. But, at this point, I remember when I first got my Super Nintendo, and I got it for my sixth grade graduation when I was a kid. And my main problem with these re-releases is the limited games that they have. Now, with that being said, I know a lot of the classics that they have in this, a lot of the classics are very much so classics. They're definitely not to be dismissed as anything else because they are great games. They also still stand the test of time. They're fantastic, and um, I can't begin to describe exactly how much I miss those systems. So with that being said, as they announced that these re-releases were coming up, I was really hoping that they had like a bigger selection for the games that they were gonna have on these systems. And for instance, that Super Nintendo really was a bit of a disappointment for me. And for that being said, they only put in 21 games, if I'm not mistaken, and a lot of them were pretty much like, like I said, there are classic games. We have Super Mario Worlds 1 and 2, and of course the Super Punch Out, if I'm not mistaken, Final Fantasy 6, and supposedly the selling point is the Star Fox 2, which was never released in America, I believe. I don't think it was released, period, at all, not even in Japan. But it didn't really matter at that point because I guess the release was just too much coinciding with the Nintendo 64 as it was coming out. And I remember Super Mario RPG, which is also on the system, by the way. Um, I think that's one of my favorite RPGs ever. And it kind of gave like a Nintendo was kind of giving us a glimpse as to what was to come for the 64. So with that being said, um, they did have some classics. However, they are missing quite a few titles because both systems have such huge libraries of games. And granted, not all of them are good. Not all of them are good. Some of them are just, absolute, garbage. Honestly speaking, if there's no other way. There's no other polite way for me to say it. A lot of them were just, there's quite a few that were terrible. But for the most part, it's not even about that. To me, it's the novelty of it, because, like I said, I'm big on nostalgia when it comes to these things, and it's missing quite a bit of games. One thing that was missing that stood out is the Nintendo was that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time game, which was a huge game, a very big game. It was excellent. It was almost it was a direct arcade port to the SNES, and amongst that, like that was missing, and then on top of that, you had Super Battletoads. You had let's not forget the Mortal Kombat games, especially Part Two, which was like the first foray. It was like the breakthrough game for Super Nintendo, considering that it was actually now they were now allowing the blood and gore to appear in the games, because beforehand, remember when Mortal Kombat the first game came out on home consoles, the only one that had the blood the blood and gore was the Sega Genesis, and it sucked because Sega Genesis, although it was great for what it was, and I'm not going to turn my back on it ever, but it just was the inferior system as opposed to the SNES. So be that as it may, the library of games that they had to select from for classics, they to me was really light on this, and it was kind of like, you know I don't want to say it, but I just hate, I just have to say it. It kind of feels like it's kind of feeling like a ripoff. Because, yeah, the system is a bargain price. It's $81 for 21 games installed. Okay, that's fine. And it comes with two controllers. Okay, that's fine. But, like I said, it's fine. The games in itself are lacking. And I know at this point they're really looking just to sell out just for the Star Fox 2, and that's fine. I get it. It's an unreleased game, and it's a novelty item to have. But at the end of the day, there was so much more that they could have definitely put on there. I remember playing the Batman Returns game for the SNES, which I thought was an awesome game. It was like the last great Batman game on any home console before the Arkham series was released on Xbox and Sony. And let's see, the Death and Return of Superman, of course, was a great game, and there was also a Ninja Turtles fighter, the Justice League fighting games as well. Uh, Quite a bit. What was that? I think I may have mentioned this earlier already. Super Battletoads, but it was it was really light to me, and it's obviously being played on the nostalgia of people in my generation, people in my age bracket, to pick up these systems again and replay it for future generations to understand, so they can see exactly what we were like when we were kids. And that's a great way. That's a great window into our childhood. Honestly, I think that's a brilliant idea on Nintendo's behalf. But what they did was just really not kosher. It didn't sit well with me at all. Having limited amounts of systems available for customers, so as they can, just as it just seems like a bad marketing ploy, and because what's going to happen is the same thing that happened with the previous release with the NES. People are going to buy these up. They're going to go ahead and they're going to put them online and sell them at these extravagant prices where no one in their right minds would pay these prices, unless you're extremely rich. But still, like, I wouldn't even pay that price even if I had that kind of money just to throw around like that. And it just didn't make any sense considering all that's happened. Nintendo's definitely, they just released the Switch this year. I thought their primary focus at least should have remained on that, and save the SNES for next year. But at this point, the way that it's going, the rate it's going, I'm assuming we're probably going to see a re-release of the Nintendo 64 next summer, or next fall, early next fall. But either way, it's just not, it's just, it makes no sense. It's very, like I said, it seems like a cash grab. It looks and it reeks of it too, no matter how you look at it, And this is my perspective, honestly. But Nintendo could do a lot better with these re-releases, in all honesty. But they're doing great off of them. Clearly they are. I've read somewhere last week or about 2 weeks ago that Atari's doing the same thing. They're jumping on the bandwagon and re-releasing a home console of the original games, and apparently they're adding some new content. I have no idea what it is, but as long as they don't add that ET game, which I which I highly doubt, I think they should be good.